Can we try for 20 minutes, no more, just to talk about the great hope we see in the church today? Yeah?
I could do that.
Go on.
Yeah. I'm the director of an institute, the Institute for Ministry Formation, and kind of our central theme is accompaniment and building a culture of accompaniment. And I and a couple of my colleagues went to a parish in the Diocese of Cleveland over the weekend and had a chance to spend a couple of days with over 300 people and teaching them some of the dynamics of interiority, a way of understanding the heart, ways of listening and connecting, and fostering a culture of accompaniment. A lot of people even said at age 60, 70, I wish I had known this 40, 50 years ago. And so helpful to understand what's happening in me, what's happening in other people. And all of this sets the stage then for the real encounters with Christ and the gospel. And under the direction of a really wonderful pastor, who you know very well, actually, Father Ryan Mann.
Love that man.
Yeah. So it's great to spend time with him. Great to see what he's doing with that parish. It's a big parish, a lot of successful people. So just a little taste of good things that are happening. I also work in the seminary, and I have a class with deacons, and then I also do spiritual direction and form the spiritual life of seminarians. And I find that the men that God is calling are really good men. I think there's a lot of promise there. There's a lot of zeal, energy. There's a lot of diversity. I think about the deacon class. We have 9 guys, diocesan and Benedictine from a variety of dioceses, and a whole range of personalities. And so I just see the Lord calling and a range of men responding to that call in a way I think is really hopeful. So I enjoy the work with them. It's nice, especially over several years, to see these guys kind of come alive and come into their own more and really take on an ecclesial character and think about them representing Christ to people. And the course that I'm teaching them now is looking at various pastoral scenarios and the kinds of real challenges that come up with either things like in vitro fertilization, with contraception, the questions that people ask, transgender questions, and around sacraments, and how to handle some of those things pastorally, how to minister to the person while also certainly upholding the teaching of the church, looking at different selections of sacred scripture and hard biblical passages that can come up, and just really helping to form them in ministry. So that's exciting, I think, to think of those men who will, I'm sure, make lots of mistakes, as we all do, but really have good hearts and a dedication to the Lord, and I think will be a good leaven in a world that really needs it.
Add to that, I've been thinking about this lately, about how Catholics are crushing it in different spheres of the evangelical world, to use that term loosely, not to apply it merely to Protestants, but we have the #1 Bible study app. Podcast in the world, thanks to Father Mike Schmitz and Ascension Presents.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
20 years ago, we're like, I'm Catholic, I don't know the Bible, I'm so sorry. Now people are following the Catholics.
Yeah, how about
we
that?
We have the #1 Christian prayer app in the world that for a time was the #1 app in the world, beating TikTok and YouTube, etc. Hello. What?
Yeah.
We have the #1 religious network in the world, EWTN. We have, what else do we have? We got a lot. A lot of good is happening. Now, it's not a competition. I'm not trying to say, we're beating them. The point is, it can be very easy to get discouraged because of the scandals and the confusion and whatever else we see in the church. Fine. But could we just take one step back and acknowledge the good work that the Lord is doing through his bride?
Well, and I had the privilege of participating in the National Eucharistic Congress.
Yeah, please talk about that. Because can I be honest? I didn't think it would be good. Well, and not just because they didn't invite me. I also just thought, okay, this is going to be one of these things. It's going to have a committee of 1,000 people, and it's going to be committed to death. But everyone I have spoken to said I was dead wrong.
And I had I didn't have high expectations. I thought it would be fine. I was grateful to be invited to well, I didn't even know exactly what they were asking me to do. I didn't have a sense of the full context of it. It turned out to be sort of higher profile than I even realized it was going to be. But I just was happy to participate, happy to be there. But we honestly, our Institute for Ministry Formation had talked about it a year before. Is this something that we want to participate in? And we sort of waffled a little bit. And then a couple of the staff members like, no, I think we should be there. I think it's, it's where the church is, what the church is doing. So we had made the decision to go. And then they asked me if I would lead the Eucharistic adoration time one of the nights. But
tell us about it. Like how many, for those who have no idea, how many people were there? Where was it? What was it like?
So I think there were over 50,000 registered. And then I think Saturday night was the high point in terms of, I think there were actually 60,000 people in the stadium Saturday night.
That's crazy. Worshipping Christ in the Eucharist.
Well, yeah, I mean, so many things like that. I mean, 60,000 people, and it was I think, a wide range in the church in terms of the kind of typical traditional, liberal, conservative, however you want to spin these categories. You really had a sense of the sort of full-on daily mass pious crowd, the full-on daily mass evangelical crowd, the full-on the Exodus 90 or Hallow crowd, Franciscan University, and then also other Catholic universities that are not as high profile, people who are clearly like Sunday Catholics, some people who are not yet Catholic, seeing what was happening. You had a full kind of charismatic element, and then you had a full sort of traditional element. Anyway, I keep spreading the diversity, but there was such a sense of unity, and it struck me as it ought to be obvious, but the sacrament of unity was actually unifying. In spite of all of the other differences, we all love Jesus in the Eucharist, and he really was the center of the Eucharistic Congress. To keep it positive, because we could say negative things about, well, like you said, sort of committed to death or people that, spin off. But the center of the National Eucharistic Congress was really the Eucharist. And that came through in a couple of ways. The very opening, it opened Wednesday evening. Bishop Cousins, who was the sort of Episcopal organizer of all of it, literally started out in Lucas Oil Stadium with the Eucharist. And the very first thing was not MCs, talks, entertainment. The very first thing was Jesus processing in, Bishop Cousins bringing him exposed on the altar. We adore him. And then Bishop Cousins began to speak and said something like, Jesus, we are here for you, and we want to give you the first word. And he who is the organizer, I mean, he had two moments, that moment and then also the outdoor procession. He didn't put himself forward. He wasn't the celebrant, homilist, all of these things. Very humble man. And just to put Jesus up front. And then the center, the gathering of the entire Congress was each evening. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday were everybody, that's the only event. Throughout the day, there were even several different masses. There was a traditional Latin mass on the schedule every day, as well as a youth mass, a Spanish mass, a Vietnamese mass, and then they had sort of a main-ish mass and that was even a Syro-Malabar rite liturgy one of the days. So, but a little diversity around the mass, the liturgy, and then different breakout talks in the afternoon, different tracks. Youth, Spanish, church ministry, clergy, those kinds of tracks in the morning. So everybody was spread out across the day, but everybody came together in the evening. And the evening was 3 hours, 7 to 10 roughly. And there were talks. They had different themes, theme of healing, of evangelization. I don't remember all the topics. But an hour of every evening was adoring the Eucharist. And so, and that was a little bit more praise and worship music the first night. It was chant and silence, beautiful chant, male, a small schola of male voices leading chant as the Eucharist was exposed. the sight and sound guys. I ended up spending a little time with the guy who was in charge of that production, and they kind of pulled him out of mothballs. He had worked in the church decades ago and had met some resistance around really doing things that could capture people's imagination. He got disillusioned, went to the evangelicals, worked for them for a while, but really missed his Catholic faith and invested himself there, and then just worked another job. They pulled him out, and then he did things like the Eucharist had its own stage and altar separate from the main stage. So people actually turned their backs to the main stage to focus on the stage and the altar that was reserved for the Eucharist.
And was the musicians on the main stage?
The musicians were, during when the Eucharist was exposed, the musicians were next to the main stage. That's right.
That's nice.
Yeah, so all of the lights went off the main stage, and they had like 1,000 spotlights focused in on the Eucharist on that central stage, which was in the midst of people.
Wow.
It was really beautiful. So everything went dark and silent. I'm sure there was more silence in Lucas Oil Stadium than has ever been there when it was actually filled as much as it was. The focus on the Eucharist. He also turned the screens off. So there were some glimpses because he wanted everybody's attention to be on the actual Eucharist, not on the picture of the Eucharist.
Who wanted that?
So this is the guy who was the head of production. I shouldn't remember what his name was, but
what a beautiful thing to want.
Yeah. And it really had the impact. I was up in the stadium the first night, and I was thinking that the screens were actually not working at first. And then I thought, oh, they actually want us to look at the Eucharist himself and not at the picture of him. So the screens were, of course, working in the sense that it was being broadcast on EWTN and the cameras were on and everything else, but they didn't want the people in the stadium to look at the screens, but to look at the Eucharist. So little details like that really focused on him. And then the Thursday or Friday, I guess, of the Congress, they had an outdoor procession, which was beautiful. So they shut down all the main streets in Indianapolis. And I imagine it was a parade route or something like that, but, fully shut down. So businesses closed basically for hours in the afternoon so that Jesus could process through the streets. And they had a wave of seminarians, a wave of religious orders, all in habits, so different sort of colors of religious orders lined up. And then also the vested lay faithful, Knights of Columbus, Knights of Malta, Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, this kind of thing. And then the bishops in magenta, and then finally a kind of platform with two bishops kneeling, adoring the Eucharist. I had friends who helped to decorate the platform. They actually had candelabras hanging in the platform and everything beautiful. And he was processing down the streets of Indianapolis. That was already beautiful. People were lining the streets, and then they fell in behind the procession so that everybody followed along. And then it ended at this park and this massive World War I monument. And I was so struck. I just hadn't looked forward to anything, and so I didn't know what I was to expect. And we came around the corner, and then I saw that, elevated 2 stories high was this altar with 6 candles. And that's where Bishop Cousins processed the Eucharist up and elevated him on this massive World War I monument. And everybody filled in the park, and the whole center of Indianapolis was worshiping Jesus. I was really like, what is happening? I can't believe that this is going on right now. I just blew my mind. And I have a directee actually who works in Indianapolis in a secular company, and he said he had colleagues say, what in the world's going on? What are those people looking at? What's going on down there downtown? And he says, well, that's Jesus Christ. They're worshiping God in the center of Indianapolis. So the effect that it had on the city was profound, but just beautifully done. And then the evening that I was able to be the Eucharistic part of, they asked me to compose a litany of healing and repentance, and just a way of encountering him. And my thought process was, well, the Eucharist is exposed, But that can make Christ feel very far away. If you're in the fourth tier of a stadium, is there a way that I can just help people to encounter him more personally? So I tried to find ways of touching the heart, places that are wounded, places that feel lonely, places that are neglected, places that feel abandoned in us, and just to invite Jesus, come close to me. Jesus, heal my heart with your love. But they wanted it also to be a litany of repentance. And so I wanted to name some ways that we can fall short in terms of not standing up for those who are being abused, not standing up for those who are weaker, but also ways that we invalidate our own hearts, that we silence the cry of our hearts, that we silence the righteous anger within us in the face of evil. So just named a lot of those things as well. And I honestly thought, who in the world in a stadium full of 50,000 people has enough felt safety to be vulnerable enough to allow those things to touch the heart? I mean, I knew that I was opening up vulnerable places, and I kind of thought, well, I don't know if this is going to be helpful for anyone. But again, the atmosphere there was so powerful. All the lights went off, all the lights on the Eucharist. And so even though you might be surrounded by people told me later that there was a real sense of security in the darkness and the quiet. And then just my voice leading people in prayer. Someone emailed us that he was healed from years of depression in the context of that prayer. A number of other people had a real turning point. People told me it was the most powerful encounter they've ever had with the Lord as they were praying through the litany. It's just amazing to hear what God did through that. And then I had the privilege of processing around the stadium, the floor of the stadium with the Eucharist, which was huge. Literally, the host was larger than my head, and this monstrance was about 20 pounds. And so I was able to sort of wedge myself in, but carrying it half an hour around the floor of the stadium was really a powerful experience. And again, even though I wasn't sort of going up and down the stands or something like that, so many people said, I could really feel Jesus moving towards me. There was something so powerful in that procession. So all of that to say, it was an amazing grace for the church, I think. I think there was a real experience of unity. Everybody I've talked to has said the same thing from a variety of participants. I ended up walking back with a number of bishops each evening because there was a tunnel for the speakers and the bishops to get back to the hotel. And so I had a chance to talk with a few of them who were really deeply moved and who really participated. Even though they were, in some sense, the organizers, and they could have been more center stage, really the bishops weren't. They were humble participators, guiding their flocks, being with their own people, and then just themselves adoring him. And so anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, really beautiful.
A big thanks if anyone's watching who participated in organizing this event in any way. Thank you. Thank you for all the effort you put into it. Glory to Jesus Christ. I want to tell you about a course that I have created for men to overcome pornography. It is called strive21.com/Matt. You go there right now, or if you text STRIVE to 66866, we'll send you the link. It's 100% free, and it's a course I've created to help men, to give them the tools to overcome pornography. Usually men know that porn is wrong. They don't need me or you to convince them that it's wrong. What they need is a battle plan to get out. And so I've distilled all that I've learned over the last 15 or so years as I've been talking and writing on this topic into this one course. Think of it as if you and I could have a coffee over the next 21 days and I would kind of guide you along this journey. That's basically what this is. It's incredibly well produced. We had a whole camera crew come and film this. And I think it'll be a real help to you. And it's also not an isolated course that you go through on your own, because literally tens of thousands of men have now gone through this course. And as you go through the different videos, there's comments from men all around the world encouraging each other, offering to be each other's accountability partners and things like that. Strive21, that's strive21.com/Matt, or as I say, text STRIVE to 66866 to get started today. You won't regret it.